Max had never been to a place like this before. As he entered the alien dimension, everything felt wrong. Not in a bad way, more in a "why did I sign up for this?" way. He looked around at the beings, alien in the truest sense of the word, and immediately regretted every decision that had led him here. His sister, Lyra, was by his side, floating slightly above the ground like she owned the entire dimension. The moment they arrived, Max felt a strange heat in the air, as though the very atmosphere had a touch of seduction to it. It wasn't quite oppressive, but it was noticeable. "I really think we should go back," Max muttered under his breath. Lyra shot him a glance. "Why? Don't tell me you're already nervous. It's just a diplomatic mission." "Yeah, a diplomatic mission to an entire planet of sexual deviants," he quipped, adjusting his collar. "You never mentioned how intense it was here." "I did. I explained it," Lyra replied, her eyes sparkling with amusement. "It's a pleasure-focused culture. Max, relax and enjoy the ride." Max shot her a side-eye. "Yeah, well, I'm not here for that kind of pleasure. I'm here for a trade agreement, not whatever this is." "Max, don't be so uptight," Lyra said, her voice dripping with playful teasing. "You might even find it enlightening." "Enlightening? The only thing enlightening is that weird, blue glow coming from that thing over there." Max gestured toward a creature that looked like it was made of both gelatin and tentacles, doing something very suggestive. Lyra laughed. "You have so much to learn. Now come on." She turned and led him deeper into the heart of the dimension, where the air grew even thicker with the scent of strange flowers and what might be incense, or pheromones. "This is the central pavilion. The ambassador will be waiting." Max didn't like how much the phrase, waiting, sounded like a trap. But he followed anyway, unsure if it was his curiosity or the intense alien vibe that made his legs move. What had started as an awkward situation quickly escalated to something far stranger. The deeper they went, the more peculiar the people around them became. Alien bodies and strange designs blended in ways Max couldn't wrap his mind around. One alien was covered in shimmering scales that didn't quite seem to belong to the body they encased, while another's limbs seemed to shift in and out of existence. Some were humanoid, others not so much, but all had one thing in common: they were eyeing Max with interest, and it wasn't just curiosity about his diplomatic mission. "Why is everyone staring at me?" Max asked, starting to feel uneasy. He adjusted his jacket again, but it didn't help. "They're interested in your human energy," Lyra said with an air of nonchalance that made it worse. "It's different. Exotic." "I'm exotic?" Max wasn't sure how to feel about that. But before he could respond, Lyra was already moving through the crowd, leading him toward a towering, elegant alien figure sitting on a translucent throne. The alien ambassador stood and welcomed them in a language Max didn't understand, but the translation device in his ear helped. "Welcome, travelers. I hope your arrival has been pleasurable." Max nearly choked on his own spit. "Pleasurable? It's been excellent." Lyra cut him off, shooting him a sharp look. "Yes, pleasurable. Very much so." Max shut his mouth. The ambassador turned toward him, a slow, deliberate movement, and gave him a smile that didn't feel reassuring. If anything, it made him feel more exposed. "We've been eagerly awaiting the human delegation. Your species has such wonderful appetites." Max froze. "I beg your pardon?" "Oh, don't be shy," the ambassador continued, clearly unfazed by Max's discomfort. "We've studied you. The humans, they are full of fire, passion, lust." Max's stomach sank. "That's not exactly why we're here," he muttered. "We're here for a trade agreement." "Of course. But before we get into business," the ambassador's grin widened, "why don't you join us for a small ritual? A warm welcome, if you will." Lyra stepped forward eagerly. "It's tradition, Max, don't be rude." Max wasn't sure whether he should laugh, cry, or just make a run for it. But before he could make up his mind, the ambassador snapped his fingers, and the atmosphere shifted. Strange, intoxicating music began to play, filling the space with a low, pulsating beat. Max looked around, unsure of what was happening. "Don't worry, Max," Lyra whispered. "It's just a cultural thing. A little demonstration of human sensuality." "A demonstration?" Max repeated, wide-eyed. "Of what?" Lyra smiled. "You." Max's heart skipped a beat as an alien figure, one who looked like a humanoid cheetah in a tight-fitting outfit, approached him. Before he could react, she slid her hands over his shoulders, tracing the curve of his back with almost exaggerated gentleness. "Such fascinating musculature," she murmured in a voice that vibrated with honey tones. "I can feel your heat." Max didn't know what to say. He could feel the warmth of her touch seeping through his shirt, her alien scent swirling around him. "Look, this is not what I thought I was signing up for," he stammered. The alien smiled and, before he could stop her, leaned in, brushing her lips against his ear. "It's all part of the ritual, darling," she cooed. "Don't worry, we're all friends here." The air felt thicker. His mind buzzed with the strange cocktail of confusion, attraction, and sheer bewilderment. I didn't sign up for a ritual. I signed up for a deal." Lyra, hovering beside him with that smug look of hers, finally stepped in. "Max, just relax. You're too uptight. It's just a bit of fun, and it's part of the customs here. We'll get through it. And then we can negotiate the terms." Max couldn't believe what was happening. A few minutes ago, he was just a guy looking to close a deal. Now, he was the center of attention in a dimension where everything revolved around pleasure, with an alien sister who might be more than she seemed, and an ambassador who was clearly enjoying watching him squirm. "Yeah, well, I didn't expect my first diplomatic mission to be this hands-on," he muttered. Lyra only smirked. "Oh, Max. You really have a lot to learn about intergalactic relations." As the alien cheetah woman stepped closer, Max's discomfort grew. But it wasn't long before he realized that this wasn't going to be as simple as just sitting through a meeting. He was being pulled into something far stranger than he ever anticipated, and at the center of it all was his so-called sister, who seemed more and more like a very different kind of companion. Max couldn't believe what was happening. Everywhere he looked, something was going on: people, aliens, things, all engaged in highly suggestive behaviors. No one seemed to care that Max was standing there, gawking like a fish out of water. He wasn't even sure if this was a dream or some strange fever dream brought on by intergalactic travel. Lyra, on the other hand, seemed completely unfazed. "Can we just go?" Max asked, his voice strained. "I thought we were supposed to be here for diplomatic stuff." "Not this." Lyra gave him an incredulous look. "Max, you have to stop overthinking everything. It's a simple exchange of culture and ideas." "Culture and ideas?" Max barked. "These ideas are not the kind I signed up for." He pointed at a passing alien who was in the middle of what appeared to be a public display of, well, something that no Earth law would ever allow. "What is even happening here? This place is like a strange, perverted theme park." Lyra sighed, shaking her head. Max. You're so old-fashioned." She nudged him playfully. "You see, in their culture, intimacy is just another form of communication. They don't see it the way humans do." "Then why did you tell me this was a diplomatic mission?" Max was starting to get annoyed now. "I was promised a boring trip with lots of paperwork and meetings, not whatever this is." Lyra smiled slyly. "You should be grateful. You're getting an experience that most humans only dream about. Just relax and go with the flow." Max threw up his hands in exasperation. "Relax? I'm in the middle of what could only be described as a space orgy. I don't think relaxation is the vibe I'm going for right now." But Lyra was already walking ahead, the crowd parting for her like she was royalty. She didn't even glance back as she strolled forward with her usual confidence. Max grumbled under his breath, walking behind her reluctantly, trying to ignore the increasingly bizarre things happening around him. Every step seemed to bring something more absurd into view. They reached a towering structure, a giant spire that looked both sensual and menacing in equal measure. The base was lined with what appeared to be soft, glowing cushions, and standing nearby were beings with exaggerated features, narrowed eyes, elongated limbs, and skin that shimmered in odd, hypnotic colors. Max couldn't quite tell if they were looking at him, or just generally staring into the void of whatever nonsense was happening here. "Here we are," Lyra said, glancing over her shoulder with a grin that suggested she knew exactly what was about to happen. "This is where the real fun starts." Max groaned. "You've got to be kidding me." Lyra looked at him with a playful glint in her eye. "Come on, you didn't think this would be all boring meetings and shaking hands, did you?" Before Max could respond, a creature, definitely not human and very much alien, stepped forward. It had 3 arms, 2 heads, and a seductive grin that made Max feel immediately uncomfortable. "Welcome, human," the creature said in a voice that slithered into his ears. "We've been expecting you." "I don't think I'm ready for this," Max muttered, trying to take a step back, but Lyra was already pulling him forward. "This is just a simple exchange of customs," Lyra explained, glancing at him over her shoulder. "Think of it like a cultural immersion. You're not really getting the full experience unless you participate, Max." "I didn't sign up for this kind of immersion," he muttered, but Lyra wasn't listening. The creature before them made a gesture, and the surrounding beings moved aside, revealing a large, plush seating area. "Come, human," the creature said smoothly. "You must partake in our welcome ritual. It will only take a moment." Max's eyes widened in horror. "Ritual? What do you mean, ritual?" Lyra smiled sweetly, her hand on his back, nudging him forward. "Just relax, Max. You're going to enjoy this. Think of it as diplomacy." Max felt his heart race. "I'm not here for this." But as he looked at Lyra, her expression was unreadable, her gaze intense. She had told him to trust her, but the situation was spiraling out of control fast. He had to admit, part of him, against every instinct he had, was curious. And Lyra seemed so confident, almost excited. Maybe this was how things worked here. Maybe the aliens really did treat this as a casual, normal interaction. After all, humans didn't have to be so uptight about everything. Right. But just as he thought about backing out, the creature's hands were suddenly on his shoulders, guiding him toward the cushioned seat. Max froze, his breath caught in his throat. "Lyra, what is this?" The alien creature didn't answer immediately. Instead, it leaned in closer, its lips brushing against Max's ear. "Trust me, human. You're going to like this, more than you think." Max froze, a cold sweat breaking out on his forehead. "What do you mean by that?" Lyra's voice rang in his ear, calm and comforting. "It's not what you think, Max. It's just how they greet visitors here." A mischievous grin spread across the creature's face. "Yes, this is exactly how we greet visitors. It's a cultural exchange, you could say." Max glanced at Lyra, confusion and doubt written all over his face. "Cultural exchange?" he muttered, unsure whether to laugh or scream. "And what do you do here? Sit around and make out with everyone who walks in?" Lyra shot him a look that was half amused, half exasperated. "It's not like that, Max. Just trust me." The creature gently pressed him onto the cushion, its body close to his. Max's heart raced in panic. This was not the diplomacy he'd expected. This wasn't even diplomacy at all. It was something else, something confusing and surreal. The air felt thick with tension, and the overwhelming sense of being out of his depth washed over him. And yet, there was something about Lyra's gaze that made him pause. She wasn't angry, she wasn't mocking. She was just waiting. "Relax," Lyra whispered again, almost as if she knew he was on the verge of pulling away but didn't want him to. Max swallowed hard. Was this actually happening? Max's eyes were wide, and his mind was racing. Every step he took felt more surreal than the last. There was no way to prepare for something like this. He thought he could handle strange alien cultures. He was human, after all, and humanity had survived its own fair share of bizarre customs. But this was different. This wasn't just some cultural exchange. This was a sensory overload. Lyra had disappeared into the crowd, and Max, now completely lost in a sea of strange creatures, was left to his own devices. The air was thick with heady fragrances, intoxicating to the point where it was almost dizzying. He stumbled through the crowd, trying to regain his bearings. His thoughts were racing as he searched for his sister, but he couldn't seem to focus on anything for long. Everywhere he turned, something was happening, something involving bodily fluids, strange attachments, and far too much human-esque nudity. He stopped, pinching his nose in frustration. This was nuts. Max! Over here! Lyra's voice snapped him out of his stupor. He turned, and there she was, standing by a large structure. At least he thought it was a structure. It could have been a living organism. Hard to tell in this place. Her smile was wide, almost too wide, as if she were enjoying this entire situation way more than he was. Where did you go? Max asked, feeling a bead of sweat roll down his forehead. I'm about to lose my mind here. You have to tell me that we're not staying long. Lyra only smiled, unaffected by his panic. Max, relax. We've barely scratched the surface of the experience. Trust me, once you embrace it, you'll understand. Everyone here is just open. It's like a communal experience of self-expression. Max looked around, his face contorting. Self-expression? This isn't self-expression, it's self-exposure. And how are you so calm? Aren't you uncomfortable? You're human. You should be reacting the way I am. She chuckled. I'm not the one who's confused, Max, you are. You're overthinking it. You have to let go of your human preconceptions and just... Before she could finish, a strange alien approached them, leaning in close. Its face was a blur of colors, an amorphous thing that seemed to shift and warp with every blink. Max instinctively took a step back. But instead of moving away, the alien smiled, revealing rows of sharp, gleaming teeth. Human male. The creature spoke in a melodic voice, its tone oddly inviting. You are different. Not like the others. Max blinked, unsure how to respond. Was this a compliment, or a warning? The creature's gaze shifted to Lyra, and then back to him. I sense discomfort. But this place will change you. Lyra, ever calm, placed a hand on Max's shoulder. It's okay, Max. They mean no harm. Just go with it. Max shook his head. No, no, no. I'm not going with anything. This is insane. This whole planet's insane. Before he could protest further, the alien gestured toward the building-like organism behind them. Come, human. See the true experience. You'll feel different when you leave. Max hesitated, caught in a weird mix of curiosity and fear. I don't think I'm ready for whatever you think different means. Lyra nudged him, her smile teasing. Come on, Max, don't be such a buzzkill. They're offering you an opportunity here. Besides, you need to learn to loosen up. Look around you, this is what freedom looks like. Isn't that why we're here? The word freedom rang in his ears like a mockery. He thought he'd come here to negotiate trade deals and represent Earth, not to wander through a bizarre alien carnival where the currency seemed to be sexual favors. But Lyra wasn't giving up. You won't understand until you try. Trust me. The alien's voice pulled him back from his thoughts. You'll enjoy it, human. You'll see, it's not just about pleasure, it's about expression. Max glanced back at Lyra, who was already walking ahead, unbothered by anything around her. Expression. The whole thing sounded like a bizarre cult, but Lyra was right. He had no choice but to follow along. If he wanted to finish this ridiculous mission and go home, he'd have to play along. Reluctantly, Max followed Lyra and the alien into the structure, his mind racing. What had he gotten himself into? As he stepped deeper inside, the air felt warmer. And despite his protests, a strange sensation washed over him, an almost hypnotic pull, urging him to abandon his reservations. He shook his head. He had to be strong, keep his focus. This wasn't a pleasure vacation, this was a mission. But everything in this alien world seemed designed to make him forget that. He glanced at Lyra again, but she was now chatting with a group of aliens, each one radiating a kind of unnerving calm. Max felt like the outsider, the only one who was still clinging to his earthly inhibitions. It was as if the entire universe had decided to pull him into a ridiculous game, and he was the only one who didn't get the memo. Then, the strange alien from before returned, placing a hand gently on his shoulder. The touch was light but had an odd electric charge to it. Human, don't resist. Let the experience consume you. Feel it. Max recoiled slightly but tried to mask his discomfort with a nervous laugh. Yeah, right. I'm all about the experience. The alien nodded knowingly. You will be. Eventually. Max didn't know what was worse, the alien's unsettling confidence or his growing curiosity about what the hell was going on here. Either way, he had no choice but to keep going deeper. Max felt his brain slowly turn to mush as he tried to process what Lyra was saying. He had come to this place to handle some high-stakes intergalactic diplomacy, and instead, he was knee-deep in a cultural maelstrom of unrestrained sexuality and open sensuality. Every turn, every interaction, felt like another trap designed to throw him off balance. Seriously, Lyra, what is going on here? Max demanded, now feeling a full-on sense of panic creeping into his voice. This place is some kind of weird sexual zoo. People are touching each other. They're making noises. There's like actual, squishy sounds happening. What kind of people are these? Lyra's lips curved into a knowing smile. Max, this is how they communicate. What you're seeing isn't just about sex, it's about freedom, liberation, and the expression of pure desire. Don't be so repressed. Enjoy yourself? Max stared at her in disbelief. Enjoy myself? You're the one telling me to enjoy myself, and yet you're just chilling here like nothing's happening? Lyra, this is insanity. This isn't a diplomatic mission. This is a personal nightmare. You're making it worse by overthinking, she replied, her tone soft and teasing. Sometimes you just have to go with the flow. Let your inhibitions go, and see where it takes you. He nearly choked on the air. You want me to just go with the flow? In this place? You've got to be joking. No, I'm serious. You're missing the point. Trust me, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. You'll see, once you stop worrying about it, it all starts to make sense. She winked at him. Come on, live a little. Max wanted to scream. His whole body was stiff with anxiety. Every fiber of his being was telling him to leave, now. But instead there he was, stuck in a bizarre dimension where pleasure ruled everything, even the air he breathed. It was like being trapped in an alternate reality where the laws of human decency didn't exist. The idea of abandoning the diplomatic mission felt increasingly appealing, but he couldn't. He had a job to do. Even if that job involved surviving this. Suddenly, Lyra turned to him, and her voice was dead serious. Look, Max, I know this is a lot to take in. But you have to trust me when I say this. You're here because you need to learn about this. The people of this dimension, they see humans as exotic. They believe your species is intensely sexual, far more so than any of theirs. But it's not the sex they want. It's the intensity. The passion. Max just gawked at her. What the hell are you talking about? You think they're fascinated by humans because we're passionate? That's not the vibe I'm giving off here, Lyra. She smiled knowingly, her eyes glinting. I know you're uncomfortable, but trust me, there's more to all this than just the immediate reactions. The moment you let go and embrace this place, you'll see. It's about freedom, connection, exploration, and yes, sometimes it involves getting a little hands-on. Max shuddered. I've already had enough hands-on for a lifetime, thanks. Well, maybe you have, she said with a sly grin. But the whole point of this is to discover yourself. You're holding back too much. Max, letting go isn't just about giving in, it's about understanding the depths of pleasure and how it connects us. It's a form of communication. Max could barely even comprehend her words. It wasn't just his discomfort that was preventing him from enjoying the experience. It was his very human understanding of relationships and intimacy. He wasn't ready for this. But there was no way out. There was no avoiding it. And despite himself, a part of him started to wonder if maybe, just maybe, Lyra had a point. Still, his panic wasn't going away. He was lost in a world that had completely different rules than anything he had known. Everything about this dimension felt like it was challenging every boundary, every norm, that he had ever grown up with. And yet, he couldn't escape the fact that everyone around him was happy. They were enjoying themselves in ways he could barely fathom. "I'm not sure I can do this, Lyra," he admitted, his voice quieter now. "I don't think I'm built for this kind of world." She softened her expression. "I understand. But sometimes, Max, you just have to embrace it, or you'll never understand what you're missing." And that's when it hit him. The problem wasn't the world he was in. The problem was him. He was so wrapped up in his own discomfort that he wasn't able to experience it fully. Every fiber of his being was telling him to retreat, to hold on to the conventional, but deep down, a small voice was telling him to try, to learn, to let go. Max took a deep breath. "Okay. Fine. I'll try." Lyra beamed. "That's the spirit." But even as he spoke the words, Max's mind was racing. What was he even agreeing to? What kind of try would this be? Was he really ready to throw all of his human constraints out the window? It was one thing to be thrown into a weird situation, but quite another to think about actively participating in it. But as Lyra walked away with her seductive smile and her confident strides, he couldn't shake the feeling that his world had already been irrevocably changed. The question was, how much more would it change before he had a chance to stop it?